Welcome everybody to Heartway Church. So glad that you're here. If it's your first time, welcome. My name's Danny. I get to lead the charge here alongside of some other incredible leaders and volunteers who make this happen week in and week out. Memorial Day weekend, y'all have fun plans? Kind of? I know somebody went to the hockey game last night. Let's go, baby. Panthers doing pretty good. I love it. Well, I'm happy to see you. I'm glad that Heartway is a part of your Memorial Day plans. And today, we got a special treat for you, ladies and gentlemen. I get to introduce you to another one of my incredible friends. Anytime I have the opportunity to do that, I get so happy because I know so many wonderful people that are doing great work in the world. And today, I have a friend by the name of Sarah Calling. She is a soul care director. She's a licensed mental health counselor, and she is going to come up today to share a little bit about this theme of faith and mental health. And the big picture theme I have for us is restoring wholeness. But we're going to see where this conversation goes. And if you would, please put your hands together to welcome up Sarah.
Hello, family. Whoa, hot.
Sarah, I'm
Amazing.
so happy
Hi.
you're here.
Yay! I'm so glad to be here.
We vibe, we connect on this deeper level because we're like exposed to similar teachings and on a similar trajectory.
Yes, it's so sweet. It's like kindredness
Yes.
happening already. And even I walked in this morning and I was like, oh, cool, my people.
Yes,
You know?
yes. I love that you
Like,
can
this
feel
is so
like
great.
that.
So great.
First thing that Sarah said to me today was like, the vibes here are
The
amazing.
vibes. That band, are you kidding?
Oh my gosh.
You must be kidding. Y'all, that's good. That's really good.
Also, Sarah didn't just bring herself. She brought someone else with her in her belly.
I did. I'm 8 months pregnant. So we're creating life over here. You actually got my name right.
Oh, great.
So Sarah Claire is my double. It's like a double name.
Okay.
So my last name has been in transition because I got married. And I don't know, ladies, when you get married and you have to change your name, that's a whole thing.
It is.
It's a whole thing that men don't have to do. So I waited a while, and then now that we're having a baby, I was like, fine, I'll change my name. So my new last name, I guess, is Calling, and then my original last name is Smith. So it doesn't matter. But Sarah Claire is my the name.
Maybe you can write a devotional book, Sarah Calling.
Yeah, so Jesus
Kinda like
Calling.
Jesus Calling.
Come on. Sarah Calling.
Cheesy joke.
Yeah. Anyway, but yes, I'm with child, and we're so glad to be here. I have been so sick, my pregnancy, it's not been fun. I don't know if any of you had fun pregnancies, but this one has not been super delightful. But I have felt good the past couple days.
Good.
So I felt like,
Good,
oh my
good.
gosh, Lord, thanks for getting me here. Because I was bopping here today. I live in West Palm Beach.
Yes, she made the hike, so thank you.
I made the hike, and I'm so glad. I just feel so aligned being here with you all. Thank
We're
you.
connected
Thanks
through
for welcoming me.
we're connected through some mutual friends in West Palm because we both went to the same school, Palm Beach Atlantic University. And Sarah, are you on staff at Providentia, or you're just
So I am my title is Soul Care Director at Providencia, West Palm Beach. It's a kind of a very similar spiritual community up there that's about the same years old, a church plant. And we are kind of trying to do similar work in the world, I think, is the feel. So that's really special. And because I'm a counselor, my role is really integrating the intersection of mental health and emotional health or emotional healthy spirituality, which I know you guys love here, which is awesome, and spirituality in your faith journey.
so important. So let's just jump off with
Great,
that.
let's go.
I want to hear about your story of becoming a therapist and how faith plays into that and how you bring those two worlds together, the good, the bad.
Yeah, the ugly. Okay, so I grew up in the church. I would say very evangelical, Protestant. This is my world, and this is all I knew. And I grew up in Central Florida, and I'm trying to think of how far I go back, because I don't want to go too far back. You know what I mean?
Well, you go as far as you need to.
Into my story, but I basically the framework I had for being a human being was church, was the gospel, was the Bible, and that was great. That was a great foundation, right? Very helpful. I believed God loved me. I believed God loved other people. I heard it. I believed. I was like, this is good news. I'm into this. It was very easy for me to be a faithful young person. And when I also had the gift of being in a theater community. So do we have any theater kids out there? Okay. Yeah. So I did musical theater in like middle school, high school. I got a BFA in musical theater in college. I went to New York and I performed in New York and all over the country in like regional theaters and Broadway tours and stuff like that. Yes, girl. And theater was like this kind of alternate balance to like church, which is sad that that is true. But I got the emotion of life. You know, I got the embodiment of life from theater because I wasn't really maybe getting that as much in the church. And so it exposed me to people who are different than me. You know, it exposed me to different ways of life and people's stories and like these character stories that we were portraying. And it really was like it caught me young. And I was like, we're going to Broadway, people. That's what we're doing. So when I graduated from college, I traveled a lot and like worked in different theaters. And then I eventually made my way to New York City and was like pursuing the dream. You know, when you have a dream and you're young and you're like, we're doing this. This is what God has for us. And I totally attached God's will for my life and the expectation that I would get what I wanted. Like that God's will, like he's like, this is what I have for you. And so therefore, if you're good, I'll give it to you, right? And if you were raised in the 90s and you also went through like True Love Waits and like purity culture things, that same dream of like being married, right, was a similar thing that I attached to God. And I attached to my faith somehow like really strongly. And through the breakdown of my career as an artist and beginning to date a man who I was super convinced God told me was my husband. Has anyone ever told, or has God ever told you someone's your husband? Isn't that funny how that works? That's cute. So through that journey, my unraveling began, right? And I'd started kind of like, whatever word you want to use for deconstruction, I started challenging the beliefs I had been given and like the black and whiteness of the church and God and evangelical rhetoric. I challenged that in my early 20s, but when it was like thought, but then it got into my own life when stuff started to break down and you're like, so like what we talking about, God? Where's the blessing? Like where's the things that you said were mine? So I got in this like relationship. It was probably my first like real adult relationship in my mid-20s. And I started to have like symptoms, like anxiety that I didn't know what that was, to be honest. Like I had never experienced physiological anxiety. I like was crying all the time. I was like having like the tight thing in your throat where I call it turtlenecking. But I know now that it's like a real thing. It's like your globus something that actually holds tension until you cry and then it releases. That's amazing. So crying is really healthy, guys. But I was doing it all the time. I was just anxious. I was like insecure. I was really going through a lot. And a friend of mine was like, hi, I love you. I love you. But if you wouldn't mind calling a counselor, that would be better for you. Wow. And better for me in our relationship. A great friend. So she was like, here's a counseling center in the city. And I was like, okay, cool. So I went to this counselor and I cried for like the first 5 sessions, just like the whole hour, because I was just unburdening all this stuff. And people were like, she was listening to me in a way I had not been listened to before, I think. And I was listening to myself and I was asking these deeper questions about my identity and about God and about my career and about this relationship. And I think about sometime through that, I was like, I want to do what you're doing. Like, that seems like a cool career, And if I'm not going to be on Broadway and if I need to because the man I was dating at the time lived here in like South Florida. So I was like, I can't stay in New York. What am I going to do? And then I was like, well, that seems fun. And so literally without like knowing a therapist, like without ever having, like I'd been to therapy like a handful of times, I was like, I'm going to be a counselor. And I started Googling and I found Palm Beach Atlantic and I was reading a lot of Brene Brown. Do we have any Brene Brown fans in the house?
Yes,
okay.
Yes.
Saint Brene. I have a saint candle. In my office. Anyway, I hope that's not like heretical or something.
That's awesome, actually.
Whatever. She's doing God's work. And so I was reading a lot of her work and just really intaking a lot of that. And I was like, well, we're just going to go to South Florida and become a therapist, I guess. And so I did that. And then the guy I was dating, of course, we broke up and my heart exploded. And I went through this deep like unraveling of myself and my faith. You know, the questions started coming together at the same time of like, what's happening to me? How did I get here? How is God going to take me out of this? Never experienced that level of pain and just like broken openness. And I was like, I left my house, I left my friends, I left my career, I left my agent, I left all that I knew to come to this place where I knew no one but like him and his family, you know? And he was like, I want to be best friends, but I don't want to marry you. And I was like, ouch, that hurts. But like, you know, his attachment things, my attachment things, lots of things we know now that we didn't know then because of therapy. So this is how I became a therapist.
Wow. That's awesome.
That was okay?
Okay, so how has your faith evolved? How has it played a role in your therapy work now? What does spirituality look like for Sarah after this journey?
Yeah. So so much of our mental health struggles, I think, as people maybe raised in the church or raised with frameworks around God, it affects our physiological experience and our mental experience. So I realized so much of, and through like help and support of like books and podcasts and mentors and counselors, I realized that the things I was believing about God were not serving me. And then I had to say, are the things I'm is the way I'm imaging God and is the way I'm seeing God actually true to God? Like, so then it sent me back into like more curiosity about like, is God the dude up there in the sky that's like, hey, if you're good, I'll give you good things. But if you're not good, I'm over here withholding from you, you know? Or like, if you figure out my will, I'm with you. If not, I'm without you. And that is damaging theology, right? That's not helpful. And then it sends you into this like works-oriented thing, or like, if I just pray, or if I just do this, or if I just like, you know, I was trying to work my way out of pain. And then I was presented this idea that God is not trying to remove my pain. He's trying to be with me in my pain.
Come on, that deserves a few snaps.
And and that was a paradigm shift that changed everything. I was also kind of through that idea of really this incarnation of Christ and like the God with us focus instead of sovereignty God or like scary God or do this God or dogmatic, like really religious God. This like God is with us experience. And then I stepped into this spiritual community that was at Providencia that was centered around that. Like, how do we just be with each other? How do we listen to each other's stories? How do we empathize with each other? How do we show compassion to the parts of us that we're scared to share with each other? And that was like, and then it wasn't just an idea, it was like an embodied experience. And the idea that church and Jesus and all of these things, I stole this from Brene, so we're going to credit her. But that God and church and Jesus and right belief and all of these things would be an epidural for me, which I'm a 7 on the Enneagram. I don't know if y'all have done Enneagram work, but like, I don't want to be in pain, okay? I'm about to like face that real hard in about a month, so. And I'm really going to try to go natural, so pray for me. Okay, but you know, she says that she thought like God and church would be the epidural to like take the pain away. But what God actually is the midwife that holds your hand and says, I'm breathing with you. I'm right here. I believe in you. I believe you can do this. We can do this together. And that is where that paradigm lifted so much shame, so much pain, you know, just gave me an avenue to experience God in a way I hadn't experienced God before, which was so relieving to my mental health symptoms, you know what I mean? And so much of what I do now is like kind of opening a door that for people that maybe they haven't known even exists, that like God can be right here with you. And I feel like those songs we sang today were just like, you know, just like good theology, actually, which a lot of, you know, maybe worship songs don't have it. They're like, pull me out of it. Remove me from this. But it is through pain, and it is through the working through our faith and our life and our story and what happens to us and our traumas. That is, I think, where we meet the deepest, truest version of God, and where I think I met the deepest, truest version of myself. You know, so
that's so good. I think like the contrast of what I've experienced in the past in certain like church circles where I remember I was a part of one group that now I actually label as a cult, and a cult experience. But if we were sick, don't say that you're sick. God forbid, if you say that you're sick, then you're creating, it's like this whole thing where I can't even be authentic or express anything.
Scary.
It's like denial.
Yes,
total
denial.
And so what a paradigm shift, to see the world and to see God and to understand yourself in this way.
Yes.
So what about like this idea of religious trauma? I'm sure you see a lot of people because of your story that have kind of been working through that sort of thing. Can you just speak into that a little bit, what that is, what that looks like, the struggle you find people going through?
Yeah, so much of when you become a therapist and you're still like a Christian, at first I was like, oh, I'm going to be like a religious trauma therapist. And then I was like, I actually can't talk about this all day because it's heavy. It's hard. Spiritual trauma is so deep. It's like sexual trauma. If that's what you do all day, which I do I'm a trauma therapist. That's kind of my umbrella. So everything that comes in my office, I'm like, okay, what's the story underneath this? What's the wound? Because the word trauma in Greek means wound. It means something was wounded. So a sense of safety, usually, a sense of autonomy, of authenticity. So if I'm working with spiritual trauma, right, I'm looking for the wound around how you image God, how you see God, how you believe God sees you, how you experience God. So I was like, oh, I'm going to do this forever, all the time. And then I was like, no, we can't do that. Because I was still working through my own, still like, and I still am. I'm still figuring out how I engage with God and what is true for me and my experience with the Spirit and things like that. But what you were saying earlier, hold on, you said something that I wanted to say. So much of like what happens to us through messaging around church disconnects us from our bodies, from our knowing, like from our authenticity, from our honesty, which is how we connect to people, right? If we're just putting on a facade and saying like, oh, I'm good, Jesus is good, God's good, like you're not actually connecting to others, which is going to make you feel really lonely, which is going to manifest in some weirdo symptoms that are going to hurt you and probably hurt someone else. Because as our father, Richard Rohr, says, if pain is not transformed, it's transmitted. So if we're not being honest with ourselves, if we're not being honest with our community, and if we're not being honest with God, actually, we're living in a lie, which is going to create pain. It's going to create shame. Shame's probably motivating it, but it's going to create lots of stuff in your life that's not great. So this idea of spiritual trauma keeping us quiet and silenced and actually more disconnected from God. And the clearing of that is saying, this is what I'm experiencing in my body. This is what I maybe think is true. And maybe it's like not, but just the space to be honest, the space to explore a beautiful, more true version of God that feels like love, instead of control or shame or dogma or whatever. So that's a little how, and like, I think also religious beliefs are something that people hold on to so tight. So inviting anyone to like do this and be like, oh, maybe it's bigger than I thought it was, or maybe it's bigger than someone told me it was, or maybe I don't have to hold this so tight, is a really hard journey for people.
Oh, yeah.
So Christians, like real, in it, Christians sometimes is one of the hardest populations I find for me to work with. Because I'm like, guys, it's like we're taught to like be still and know and release and forgive and live in compassion and grace.
Yes.
Like, why is this so hard for you, But it was hard for me, too, so I get it.
I think of that scripture where it says, by his wounds we are healed. And going back to what you were saying about trauma and our wound, and it's like, if we're pretending like we don't have wounds, we are cutting ourselves off from a source of healing, not just for ourselves, but also for other people.
Yes.
It's as we present our wounds to one another in total authenticity that we find solidarity and healing comes from that.
Absolutely. From being seen and known. And
Yes.
and that's why Jesus even says, see my wounds.
Yes.
Touch it.
Yes.
Like, see where I've been. I get you. I'm with
Yes.
you. Yeah.
Yes.
It's good.
I think about like other religious environments where any sort of pain or any sort of negative circumstances, it's the devil's attacking me. You know, well, if that's the framework, I mean, you're going to be so disconnected from the wisdom that is there in that life experience because you're just rejecting it. You think that it's coming from some sort of an evil source.
Yes.
You know?
When really, yeah, I mean, when I was going through that breakup that rocked my world, I didn't sleep well. You know, when you go through a grief or a trauma or like a loss and you just like are up at night all the time, your body just won't go to sleep because that's how stress works its way out. But I would just wake up and I would just, for so many months, would just like rebuke the devil. Like, I just rebuke you, Satan, for making me have these thoughts or whatever. And then as I kind of shifted my perspective and I'm like, okay, what if I welcome like the little girl in me who is so sad? She's just so sad that this has happened. What if I welcome her to sit with me instead of rebuking my emotion, right? What if I got curious about what was really going on underneath this and brought that to God and then brought that to my friends and maybe brought that to my counselor? Then you have then it can be healed. And so I'm not saying don't rebuke, like, whatever, it's fine. But I am saying, please get curious about your emotion, about what's happening in your body. And if you get curious, then you can be compassionate towards it. And I remember Keith, our pastor at Providencia, one day I was like,
shout out to Keith Case.
Shout out to
Love
Keith
that
Case.
guy.
Good man. Yeah, that's how we got connected.
And he just won't come here to preach ever. I don't know
why.
Well,
he's very busy.
No, that's not why. I think he just doesn't do it. When does he go to other places to preach?
Very rarely. I mean,
See?
he has 2 churches.
That's
true.
true.
We're part of like we're doing a thing
That's
right
true.
now, but we have like a night church and a morning church, so
know.
it's kind of a lot.
Well,
I only do the night church, so I have space
he just
to come.
did like this radio interview thing.
Oh yeah.
And I'm gonna steal that whole thing for a
Take it.
message soon. So
Just play it.
Let him know, yeah, because it's so good.
Be like, Keith, if you can't come,
Yeah.
we're just gonna play it. That's amazing.
Anyways,
Yeah, but one day I was like, in my feelings, and he presented that idea to me, like, what if you stop running from this pain, and what if you just saw it like little Sarah Claire just came in, and she just wants to be seen, she just wants to be held, and then you interweave the like Christian idea or like the Christ idea of just like let the little children come to me, don't hinder them, which is to me I'm like let the raw emotion come to me and don't hinder it. Don't spiritually bypass it because it's getting us nowhere in our country and our like families and our systems to bypass pain. We have to go through it. And so that really just like in my counseling practice, in my own life, and in our church, trying to create spaces where spiritual bypassing is not allowed, Like we have these groups. Do you guys have Circle of Trust groups?
Yes.
Is that what you do?
Yes.
Thank God. Beautiful. So we call our story group. And we sit in circles and we create space for what's true, what's going on. And then we share a significant story from each person gets to share like a written significant story in their life. And then they're just seen. They're just witnessed by a group that is invited to not fix them. That's invited to not throw a scripture at them or to say, oh, yeah, well, maybe you should just pray about it. Because we've gotten enough of that. And we should bring things to the Lord, but we also need to like bring things to each other and to, to the circle. And so that's been a transformative like experience to just witness people be able to actually release burdens and to be able to like heal. Through the practice of being known and being seen and like letting the little children inside of us come to each other and then come to God.
My goodness, that's so good. And you've already been talking about this a little bit, but the word self-compassion keeps coming up for me. With religion, it can be so easy because of our distorted ideas of God based in fear instead of love. We have so much guilt, so much shame, and we are so hard on ourselves. I mean, even without religion, just humans, we're so critical of ourselves. But then you add that extra layer of religion, and it gets really dark really fast, and we're so harsh with ourselves. And so how do you guide people through this process of being more compassionate to themselves?
Well, the gift of also being a mental health counselor is that I'm trained in science, which is maybe not what we got in the church, right? So neuroscience is amazing. And when I first started learning about like the brain and the neurotransmitters and the different parts, like the amygdala that holds the pain and the trauma and the fear and like whatever, I was like, this is awesome. Say more, you know? And so self-compassion, the research around self-compassion, which is really just showing yourself kindness and grace, like what Jesus literally came to do, okay? But when we do that, when we're not doing that, let's start there. When we're not showing ourselves compassion, we are creating more cortisol in our bodies, which is our stress hormone, which is like, if you have too much, like it's helpful if a bear came in here and started running at us, you know, like we need our cortisol to get the heck out. But like there's no bear, you know? So we're just stressed all the time. And then when we're turning on ourselves because of the shame and the guilt and the messages that we've been given, and the expectations, right? We create more cortisol in our body, which is creating more and more sickness and illness and just like disconnection. When you show yourself compassion, the research shows that you create oxytocin within yourself, which is a beautiful design, you know, that we didn't make that. Somebody else made that we can be grateful for. Thanks, God, for making our brains this way. But oxytocin is the love hormone. It's what like I'm going to have a lot of soon, hopefully. You know, and like when this baby lays on me, like that, it's going to be surging, right? So when we should just say like, Sarah Claire, girl, yep, we're having a moment. You did a thing. That wasn't your best thing. You acted a way that wasn't your best, but like you're in it, you're just having a moment, and other people have had this moment. You are not alone. You are not bad, and you can bring this to someone else, and you can bring this to God. Ooh, I'm getting lots of oxytocin in my brain, and so that integration of like what Jesus calls us to is to be love and to know that we are His people by the way we love. A lot of times we're trying to love other people way better than we're loving ourselves. And like, we better do better at loving ourselves.
Absolutely.
Because it's not cute. It's not helpful. It's not like healthful. It's not, so practicing self-compassion has been really transformative for me. Because then I can go into like spaces and I'm like, if they think I'm weird, okay. Like if I, whatever. I like walked in this morning and I'm like, I don't know, soul, except for Danny. And like, I can love these people because it's all good. When like earlier in my life, I'd be like, okay, do I have to like, we gotta like be perfect. Where it's like, no, I can just be here because I have that. I could say something weird and like leave and be like, well, I said a weird thing, but like it's okay, SC, Yeah.
I love it. The first thing Sarah said to me after she said the vibes in here are amazing was, I just feel so calm, And that's a testament to the work you've done on yourself and also the environment that we've created here to allow people to be,
Yes. And if we're not allowing people to be human, and like guiding them deeper on like how to be human, not how to be God, because God's God. Like, come on. I want us to be more Christ-like, because I feel like that's what Jesus was like, hey, come, this is my way. Like, these are the ways that you could go based on what I know from God and of God and am God, But like, you don't have to be perfect. That's why we created like the whole system,
Yes.
So it is like transformative. I was given the gospel. I wasn't given that. And that is what has helped me become more embodied and present, like whole person,
Yes. Let's talk about embodiment and how maybe the way that religion oftentimes teaches us to be is so disconnected from the body, and how your therapy journey has helped you to kind of re-inhabit your own body.
Yes. You guys are a very embodied bunch, I would say. There's a vibrancy here that I'm like, okay, I can like get in my body when I'm with you. You go to some churches and it's like, so that was beautiful to witness and be a part of. But when we are told our bodies are bad, or like what our bodies feel is bad.
That's not a good starting point.
It's not great.
Yeah.
It's not a good place to start. So like these little kids in here, your body's good, Your body is so good. And the little kids and all of us, your body's good. But we were given a very cognitive framework for like faith and maybe being a human, where it's like you just have to think the right things And if I just know the right scriptures and I know who Jesus is and I can tell you back, then we don't maybe have to experience our bodies in the same way. But what I've been invited into and what I invite people into now is it is a whole body experience being a believer in Christ. It's a whole body experience being a human. You can't cut off your body from your brain. It's connected. So it's not just what I think, it's what I experience. So when we did that centering prayer, Anna, that was gorgeous. If she's in here, that was, I was like, what? Y'all do this every week?
Yeah. Yes, we do. Yes, we do.
You might see me more. So that invitation to just really inhabit our bodies and to be here and to calm and to take our sight outside of what we're, there's a bunch of stuff happening outside all the time of us, and we are very oriented to focus on that. But that invitation back into our bodies to feel, to notice. I'm always with clients, I'm always where do you notice that in your body? Or what are you noticing right now? And most every time someone will try to tell me a thought, right? Because we're just we just want to think all day. But thinking doesn't get us super far anymore, I think. We really are having to turn towards what do you feel? What's going on in your body, in your being? And our faith truly is an embodied faith. Jesus was not just a floating, ethereal, right. Ghost thing. Right. Jesus came in a body. Yeah. And did body things. Mm-hmm. And even in communion is this is my body. This is my wounds. This is my death. This is my, and so learning to be in your body is really a practice of embodiment. And you can do that through so many different ways. Yoga has been so healing for me on my journey. Just and closing my eyes during yoga, again, it's not performative because I was a dancer and I want to look right and I want to do the right things, but really that inward, what is my body experiencing here? And I'm also going to call upon a lot of that when I'm laboring here. Because that invitation to be in your body is, I think, a very holy experience,
Absolutely.
And healing.
The principle I carry with me is be where your feet are. Just be where your feet are. Yeah. And there's also wisdom in your body. There's messages that are being conveyed to you.
Yes.
Through
that we
your
just
body.
try to ignore.
Yes.
But that, we're so sick. Our body, we're just so sick because of that invitation to ignore and deny. But I think the coming home to our bodies is our greatest healing.
Yeah. Okay, I also know one of the tools that you use in your practice, we've discussed this, is parts work, internal family systems, yeah? So can you talk a little bit about that?
Millie.
How you utilize that tool, how it has helped you in your own personal life?
How much time do we have?
Yeah. We'll wrap up here.
Oh, boy. Okay.
Just give us a little something.
Okay, so internal family systems is a iteration of a therapy modality using parts work. And the main principle of this is that we have multiple parts of us that are active in a day, in our life, in our psyche, meaning you're not just one thing all the time. You're not just feeling one thing, you're not thinking one thing. You have multiple parts of you. And sometimes we call some of those parts protectors because they have been developed to keep us safe. So if I have a people pleaser part, which I do,
Me too.
Yeah, a lot of people who do what we do have a people pleaser part because we want everyone to be happy and we want to make everyone feel good and so growing up, I developed that really strong, and that part of me, that kind of protector, was trying to do a job for me, and it worked for a while until it stops working. And until, your self-critic or your perfectionist part or your addict part, the part that is oh, I'm feeling a pain, give me that drink, or your relation, the part that wants to be in relationship all the time or wants to, we even have religious parts that are oh, I'll just Jesus and me forever and that's it, that's all I need. When really that's just a protector, again, trying to keep you from pain. So we have these multiple parts. We have our protector parts that we help identify throughout the therapeutic experience. And then we realize we have the exiled parts, which are maybe the like most vulnerable stories, the parts of us that we don't want anyone to see. The like fear of being alone, fear of not being enough, fear of not being worthy, fear of letting someone down. And those are really the parts of us that are the protectors are protecting. And all of this is rooted in our story, implicit memories, or explicit memories when you're young. And then the most beautiful thing about this theory is that it says that also within us is this thing called self, with a capital S. And if you're kind of using a Christian integration of this, you can call that your spirit self or your true self, like who God created you to be at your essence. It's like the fruits of the Spirit. Or in the theory, it's like when you feel the most calm, compassionate, curious, creative, courageous, clear, like that's when you're experiencing self. And so the whole theory is to be able to identify what protectors are running our life, like what parts of us are like out and about trying to like manage the situation or put fires out of emotions and pain, and then bringing self to that and building up that sense of self, or that true self, again, which is what God created us to be. The gentle, the self-controlled, the kind, the good, the parts of us. And so many of us forget that that's even there. We actually think it's only in God. But if we want to get theological, it's the indwelling of that, right? It is within us. I believe this baby already has that goodness. Like, she's not coming out bad. Bad theology. Oh, boy. She's coming out good and whole, and she's going to experience things in her life that are going to create protectors for her, and she's going to manage, and she's going to try to firefight. But if I can help her know that God is in her and loves her, and like she is already good, and that she can develop that sense of calm and clarity and confidence, So this whole theory is rooted in this idea of there are no bad parts of us. Which is not what the church told me. You know what I mean? Church told me I got lots of bad parts and I got to do something really extreme about it. And it's very Jesus-like too, in the sense that when he says again, what's the scripture we read earlier? I think we read it in the pre-meeting, or maybe it was the scripture here. It was the pre-meeting. That what you've done to the least of these, you've done to me. Mm-hmm. This idea is like what you have done for the internal parts of you that you hate the most. The way you've treated the exiled parts, the shame-based parts, the parts that you don't want to bring to anybody. When you can go to those parts and love them with compassion, it's like what Jesus did to the lepers and to the prostitutes and to the people that were cast out of society. We have cast out so many different parts of our own selves. And so what Jesus says is like, come on in, or like, I'm coming to you, let's go home. Mm-hmm. You don't have to be alone. You don't have to be in shame. Get up, sweetness. Like, go, be free. That's a little of what this theory does. And what I get to do every day is like, someone will tell me like their darkest crap, and I'm like, oh yes, that's beautiful. And they're like, what? I did this terrible thing. And I'm like, I understand why you did that. Thank you for telling me. I'm not afraid of that. And I think even in like Psalm 139, when it says like, you're like darkness is not dark to you. I think this theory has created a world in me where I'm like, darkness is not dark to me anymore. It's like there's light there because there's a little child in all of us that only just wants to be seen and heard and loved. And our ways of coping, have taken us away from that. Wow. But this internal family systems is just saying there is a family and it's trying to keep you safe. And if we can have a different leader, if we can be more self-led or spirit-led through our life, then I can be like, oh, I notice my people pleaser really wants all of you to like me. And instead of her driving my bus right now and trying to like say all the things that'll make you like me, she can sit in the passenger seat. I'd be like, hey girl, I got this. Thank you so much. I appreciate you. But you don't get to drive. You're too young. You don't have a driver's license. Like, here's a juice box and like strap in, But I'm not kicking her out. Yes. I'm not being like, you got to get out of here. Yes. And so that's really That's the theory, and that's why
That's so good.
it's so. And it's been. I mean, it has changed my life, and it has also changed my relationship. Because my husband's also a therapist, and he's amazing. And we struggled at first, like in our relationship, because we both brought in a lot of parts, a lot of protectors, and a lot of exiles. And we both. I'm old. We got married older, and. Wow, it was a party of parts, and we were duking it out. And it was our relationship and being given this model of healing and togetherness really ushered us into like deeper connection to each other. When like the church would have been like, oh, it's hard, and like he's not acting right and you're not acting right, like this is not the right one, he's not the perfect man for you, and God has somebody else. When really this just helped us see each other and the little children inside of each other, and then reach for each other instead of run away. And it just has changed our life. And this is like the main modality that we use in our practice, because we have a group practice in West Palm. So it's life transforming, and I feel like it's God's work.
Wow.
That's my spiel.
It's so powerful, like the way that you illustrated, you meet others who come to you with their deepest, darkest, like for us to be able to do that for ourselves. It's like when that part of us is screaming, it's like, hey, I understand.
Yes.
Thank you for that.
Thank you for sharing.
You know, instead of just like, no.
Yep.
That's so powerful.
Yeah, because Jesus never was like, no.
Right.
So why are we doing that all the time in the church to each other?
It all belongs. Every part of you belongs.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
Can we give it up for Sarah, everybody?
Thank you,
My
guys.
gosh.
Thanks for having me.
I hope this was helpful for you all. You were amazing. It spoke to my soul. I appreciate you. Thank you. You're a friend of Heartway. You have a friend in us.
I'm so glad to.
How can everyone
place.
follow up with you? How can they learn more about your practice?
Our practice is called Bungalow Counseling in West Palm Beach. So it's bungalow _ counseling on Instagram. And then Providencia is our church, Providencia West Palm Beach. And yeah, if if you want to connect.
Yeah, I can
Daniel
connect you to Sarah too, so just let me know.
But we have a group practice, which is really beautiful because I'm about to pop and not be there for a second. But I have a lot of beautiful therapists that are just all schooled in this. And we're just trying to, I feel like an evangelical for this work, which is, for Christ as well. But it's really
thanks
powerful
for being
stuff.
available. Thanks for being here. And
thanks for being here, you guys, for doing this work you're doing. It's powerful.
All right, y'all.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. We'll catch you next Sunday.